WV Uncommonplace. This podcast is a variety podcast that houses numerous series to cover mental health, empowerment, podcast framework, and various intimate theories to get to know the hosts, along with occasional movies reviews and dives in pop culture with our event podcast episode. The Uncommonplace digs into bringing guests on that stories don't fit the mold and are very different. WV stands for the great state of West Virginia, and every quarter we cover something in West Virginia. Stacey and myself, JR, are your hosts, so please come along for this venture to our uncommon place.
Howdy, everyone. I'm JR. And today, like when we cover this type of topic, I love doing this because this is the stuff that the PC world or the, the people that are all conformed don't want to hear. So if you feel that way, please tune out, come back, in 17 weeks or go find a new podcast to listen to. I have with me Vic Lagina. Vic, take it over for me real quick. Tell them who you are, why you're here. That's the nostalgic part about WV Uncommonplace interviews and sessions. Go ahead and take the floor, sir.
So, my name is Vic Lagina, and I was a producer and a director in the adult entertainment industry for 20 years. My main job from 2004 until 2020, excuse me, was working for a little company called Brazzers. And I was with them since the very beginning, before they became Brazzers, actually, and made it all the way through 3 ownerships until COVID hit. And that changed the business forever. But by then I was hanging by a thread. So COVID mercifully put me out of my misery in the porn world.
Ooh, snap. All right, so you
Yeah.
answered a classified ad, right?
Yeah, so I was in LA with a girl. We were struggling quite a bit. I have 2 degrees in film production, and I used to work in the mainstream production side of things as a producer and a director and an editor. However, in LA, things didn't come so easily, and I was funding my dreams on credit cards. And one day I realized that the money is drying up. So I really need to figure this out. And I answered an ad on adultstaffing.com. There was a young Mexican kid who wanted help with his porn movie he wanted to make. So I bullshitted him quite a bit, and I told him I could do it and I could do his job for $500. And that was my first day. It was quite different than when I was running the show. That day was just kind of gross and slimy and filthy, and it was like people were smoking crack in a room. I mean, it was not exactly
Oh,
how.
snap.
Yeah, it was bad. But that day kind of made me realize that there's a better way of doing this, and there's a more professional way to run a set, and that's what I aspired to once things really got busy for me.
Now, hold on. Let's go back real quick to this crack real quick.
Yep.
Did he have the Coke can with the ashes on it burning it and you smelt that sweet shit?
No, I smelled what it smelled like an electrical socket that
Oh,
was
damn.
burning. Yeah, and then I walked by and there's 2 people in the room and they see me and they kind of just like sit up like, no, we're not smoking crack in here. That kind of deal. But yeah, it was just I needed a shower when I got home after that day. But my first day ever was with Ron Jeremy. That was
Oh,
an
snap.
interesting story. Yeah. Yeah, he was our fourth scene of the day, and his body, he had really good control over his body, where he asked his co-star, a woman named Chance Fortune, a blonde with these big areolas, to count down from 20. And by the time he got to 0, blah, he ejaculates all over her. And then afterwards, he's eating cold pizza naked in the kitchen of that crack-filled condo. And that's a memory I will never forget.
Now, from the first time that you joined this industry till let's go to like the end of it, how had it evolved? From when you first started. Obviously, you started out in the trap, and then you work your way.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it evolved quite a bit over the several ownerships that took over the company.
Mhm.
But back when I started, I mean, this was a perfect storm of timing, because our internet porn was going, but it hadn't blown up yet. I mean, there was the websites, there was this, there was that, but I got in right around that time where it was about to get over that big hurdle and completely take over. And the company that I started with, these young guys from Montreal, they knew how to market porn on the internet. And they were doing a lot of like big boob stuff, like titty fucking and little things like that, right?
Yeah.
But the when I was finishing up in Florida after I had broken up with a girl and built this business and I was ready to level up, they were ready to level up as well. And they said, if you can tap into the LA talent market, we will keep you very busy. So I pulled up stakes, drove cross country, decided to live in Vegas instead of LA because your dollar can stretch further in Vegas.
Right.
And I brought LA to me. And when I say they leveled up because I mean it was a grind. You know, I was shooting 2 scenes a day every day. And it was like those gonzo scenes where you're talking to the girl, you're telling her to shake her boobs. You know, it was like really very crude until they wanted to start getting into more scripted stuff. And that's when big tits at work and big tits at school and porn stars like it big and all that stuff. That's when we started shooting that. And that's when it just completely exploded. And then, you know, then they decided to start Pornhub. That was their idea because they knew that tube sites were coming and free porn was coming. So they were the first to do it. And that changed the business forever. And then eventually they sold the company, sold it to a guy who created this tracking software called Nats. His name was Famian. I say it's Thalman, but I've been corrected on that. Anyway, he was now a guy who was more of a tech nerd, but then wanted to like blow up. So he started buying every company out there that was making money, and it became this huge umbrella of a company that had every department imaginable. And so that was when it was like crazy, shooting 25 shoots a month, live shows. Like we're talking money going, like throwing money at everything, and we're busy. And I was able to manage that chaos. And then eventually it kind of changed. You know, there was uh, the change of what was hot. You know, in the beginning, big boobs or big butts and hot girl, and that was it. But then it started changing to what people were searching on Pornhub. And so they would dictate a lot of what we were shooting. Squirting became big. There was all these squirting shoots, which were a headache. And then you start getting into like the stepmother, stepson, step everything, right?
Yeah.
And then eventually, once the second owner got arrested for tax evasion, then another group bought his shares, and that's when it became the nefarious group called Mindgeek, who have been in a lot of trouble that you may have heard of. If you haven't, I'll be happy to tell you about it. But basically, they started really sucking the joy out of the job and making everything really like much more. I just wasn't happy. Gradually, any joy in the industry started slipping. And the content we were shooting wasn't really about the porn or the sex. It was about the ads that they were running on Pornhub. So sometimes we were shooting these ridiculous concepts and we need the girls making big eyes and big expressions because we want people to click on those ads on Pornhub and join browsers. That's what we were doing. And after a while, I had no idea what we were doing anymore. But the money was still good, so I just dealt with it.
And that's crazy to see how it evolved like that. Now, let me ask you this, man. And just we got to get just straight to the cut.
Sure.
Seeing some of your favorite porn stars, because I know you worked with a lot of them recording. Was it ever one that you just wanted to just, you know, bang them?
I mean, I was single for most of my time in the business.
Oh, no, so all right, I got you.
Now, I was in relationships. There was one I was in monogamous, and I wound up being engaged to this person before I couldn't take it anymore. And then after that, I was dating a former porn star that was also a stripper. But then I was kind of like, that was when I was in my scoundrel times, when I was doing a lot of cocaine and just being really selfish. That's really what was happening there. But when it came to, you know, performers, no, it was really a business. And a lot of times, you know, you see them on screen and you are like, oh, this person getting off the plane is going to be like really pretty. And then you see them and you're like, eesh, good thing we've got hair and makeup today because that's a lot of what goes on, you know? You rarely see someone who's naturally pretty. coming off the airplane.
Oh, snap.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you on that one. And see that I like that. Now, you had to have like a balancing act between this because you have to personal indulgence and professionalism.
Mhm.
How did you manage that? Like, how did you manage? Like I know you just told a little bit there, but like sometimes it's just like you might want to hang with these people.
Sure.
Were you ever in a position where you were able to go outside of the business and be cordial with these people and hang out, or was it one of those things where it was just strictly business and then you got the hell up out of there?
Well, when you're under the roof of the studio or the house you're renting or whatever, that's a professional sphere. You don't veer out of that. And I stuck to that because people, these girls, these guys, they're not here, to see another dick in their face or get hit on. They're there to work and to do everything. So I treated everything very professionally. Having said that, because I was so professional and because I wasn't the type of guy, I've never been the type of guy that goes up to a girl, lays down my rap, tries to like talk them out of their panties. That was never me. It was always respectful, considerate, hi, hello, nice to meet you, and then just leave it at that. And whatever that recipe was, that translated into a lot of interest outside of the studio or everything else. So when I was single, I really realized that in order for me to have any kind of relationships, the only ones that would really work were the topical ones with people in the industry, because people outside the industry that we call civilians, they really couldn't deal with the job, even though I was just a director and a producer and I wasn't a performer having sex with these girls. So even when I went out on a date with a few of them, it was kind of like a novelty. They had a lot of questions, but I knew it wasn't going to go anywhere. But beyond that, I'll tell you this, that it was very rare to have any kind of mental or spiritual connection with anyone in the business because it's a very vapid industry. So I'm not going to say it never happened, but it was very, very rare. Most of the time, it was like, we know why we're here. Okay, that was fun. And then you have the after we have to talk to each other. And that was always very awkward for me because I had nothing in common with 99% of them.
Oh wow, hot damn.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's dive into this book, Filthy: The True Story of Vic Lagina.
Yeah. The rise and pending death of Vic Lagina.
Hi, man.
Yeah, so I started writing this when I was getting out of the relationship with the former porn star stripper. And this was in early 2015 because I felt at that point I had been in the business for 12 years and it was best to get it out of my head into a tangible form. So it really started as a journal. And after getting myself all caught up from 2002 to 2015 and recapping it all, I was like, wow, my life was really a shit show. And if I'm not careful, I'm not going to make it to the finish line. So I would write, and then let's say we had a shutdown because someone may have popped for HIV or some other reason, we would have to shut down. So every time we had a moratorium, I would go back to the journal, bring us up to speed, and I continued to do that until COVID hit. I thought COVID was going to be, a brief shutdown after maybe a couple months, but the entire business flipped that day or that time period where those were making a lot more money doing OnlyFans and people shooting or wanting to pay for porn on the pay sites that I shot for, that was starting to dwindle. So that's why I kind of didn't really have a use anymore for the company. And they discarded me like a used baby wipe. That's what I've been saying, because it didn't matter that I was loyal to them for 16 years. When I had no longer had a use for them, bye. That's how empty and dark the industry could be at times.
Um,
Yeah,
so in writing this book, there's certain things that you have to anonymously, put in there, because certain people don't want things known about them.
sure.
What is something in here? What is something that didn't make the cut for the book that you would put in if you did a extended version of the book?
That's a really good question because I saved all of like the really memorable stuff for the book because I wanted to be like all encompassing. Because a lot of it was the fact that I had this idea in my head that I'm not long for this earth. So I wanted to be sure that the book was basically, the swan song of Vic Lagina. And I want it to be everything that went down. I want it to be fulfilling. So as far as what else I could talk about, I shot 3,900 or 3,792 scenes. And there's a lot of gold in those hills still. So if I do more, I will talk about specific days that I may have missed. But overall, my lawyers told me three words: not easily identifiable. And for those who are in the business and they might be anonymous, that's who are changed names or they are completely bleeped out. But for the most part, I'm very honest, and I do name names in all of this, especially with people who have had bad behavior over the course of either being under my employ or just bad behavior on set, like drinking Four Loco and passing out with your dick in your hand. That's bad behavior. So I call that dude out because with a picture. Yeah.
So I want to ask you a question about the School of Porn sections.
Yes.
What's the funniest or most bizarre lesson shared in the book?
Well, the one I'm most passionate about is the lesson on hygiene, because you would be surprised to realize that maybe some of your favorite porn stars are harboring rotten crotch. So when you're
Oh.
yeah, so either when you encounter that in your personal life, which sucks, uh, when you encounter it on like when your soundstage starts to smell like that person's vagina, it's like you're a savage. Like, how do you not smell that? So what I try to do is like teach people that hygiene is very important, and there's remedies that you could use and tips you could do that would keep you from having bad hygiene. Another one I like is when she's on her period, because they're here, and maybe it might make sense to cancel the day, but the solution in porn world is to shove a makeup sponge up your vagina, and that absorbs the blood. Yeah. Yeah. So and sometimes you have to help them fish out that sponge because you don't want it to stay up there because that would cause an infection. So that's another one. The other one's the debate on squirt or pee. That's another good lesson as well.
All right, so let me ask you this: what about if they eat onions or fish?
I mean, look, if you got a scene booked the next day, I'd say avoid the garlic, the onions, the fish, all of that the day before. The thing is, the catch-22 about porn is every time a scene goes down, the girl uses a douche, right?
Right.
And the problem with that is it upsets the pH balance of the vagina. So you're doing more harm than good. So really the remedy is have a healthy diet. Here's the other thing too. Antibiotics throw the pH in disarray. And a lot of times people need to be on antibiotics because either they have contracted some kind of sickness, or maybe that they popped for gonorrhea or chlamydia. So it's kind of like a catch-22 when it comes to this. And it's very delicate, that vagina. It's like a chemistry set.
Okay. Now let's talk about something that's not political but is political.
Mhm.
What was the industry's reckoning after the Me Too movement and the rise of woke porn standards? How did that how was that a transformation, going along with this too? How did that play out for you?
So for the longest time, I'd say up until maybe 2017-ish, there was a very hard line in porn between the gay side and the straight side. And performers didn't want there to be any crossovers. And crossovers were typically outed. A female performer or a male performer could create a no list of who they don't want to work with because, they don't want to worry about the HIV risk that is on the gay side. But once the woke porn started around 2020, when everyone was losing their mind on Twitter and everything else, if you were a guy that didn't want to have sex with a transsexual, you were outed as being transphobic.
Whoa.
So it was a really interesting argument because people are screaming about bodily autonomy. And I want to only do what I want to do and everything else. But let's say you're a man that doesn't want to have sex with a transsexual. Well, then you're transphobic. Some people felt like they were pressured into it in a lot of ways because they didn't want to get, the lynch mob on Twitter to come after them for being transphobic. So this is when the rules no longer made sense to me. And by then, I was no longer in company porn. That was when me and Brazzers had parted ways, and that was that. So in a lot of ways, I'm glad. I think I was sent out to porn pasture because the rules don't make sense to me anymore, and that's okay. I don't have to deal with it anymore.
Okay, and I like that answer. Now, at some point, you ultimately find love and redemption.
Mhm.
And your story, to me, is more of a cautionary tale. Do you
Mhm.
feel that it could be considered a cautionary tale?
Most definitely. And I'm nominated for an AVN this weekend, Saturday night, for Mainstream Venture of the Year. The book is nominated, which is hilarious because I make fun of AVN a lot in the book. But it really is a cautionary tale because I want to tell people, especially people entering the industry, you should read this. If you don't want to read about my shit show of a life and my relationships and all of that, just focus on the in memoriams of the people who died, how they died, what kind of dark mental space they were in. Read the Vic Lagina School of Porn because that would make you a better performer, as well as a code of conduct of how you should behave while you're in the industry. But it is a cautionary tale because a lot of times people die. Multiple people die every year from the porn industry, usually from overdoses or from suicide. A lot of darkness in it. So I would like to tell people that read it so you don't end up like one of the in memoriams, or you're not getting some kind of obituary written about in AVN, because it's very possible, because it is a dark industry and I absorbed a lot of it. And I'm grateful I was in my bubble out here in Vegas away from the industry, which is the Valley in LA. But even being that far away, when you're around it every day, uh, if you're a sensitive individual, you absorb that energy. And that's why eventually I was doing so many drugs, just to numb myself from all of that.
Okay, okay. Now, I thank you for that because you basically talked about how people chase the success in this industry driven by instant gratitude and extremes.
Mhm.
Um, Thank you for that. There. Now, inside this book, how do you want these readers to feel about it? Do you want to feel inspired, entertained, or maybe a little disturbed? How do you want them to feel? What is the gauntlet you're trying to put them into?
We're trying to check all those boxes. Now, if you write effectively and you write a good product and a good book, you want to jar people to their core. You really do. You want to shake them up a little bit, because a lot of people think, oh, wow, the porn industry must be crazy. It must be fun, girls, sex, blah, blah, blah. Okay, yeah, there is all of that. However, there's a lot that is not alluring at all. And I think people don't realize it as much. They're seeing what's in front of the camera instead of what's seeing behind the camera, or what goes on day to day with performers and people in the industry. So it is all of the above. I mean, people have said like certain chapters literally make them weep. Some of them are like, I was laughing hysterically. Some of them I was grossed out. These are all boxes that I want to check. And I try to filter people out by the first line in the book. Because then if they read that and they're still with me, come on, you're part of the crazy train, and let's go, and I will take you on a crazy ride. And that's really what I'm trying to do. um, some people have a hard time or finding time to read, so the audiobook could be for them. And once the lawyers were locked the text, meaning they did their passes, they gave me their tips on what I should reword or how I should change things. Once text was locked and the book started being designed, that's when I started recording the audiobook. And that was a 50-day process that I spent a very long time on curating it. And it's my kind of weird. If I say to anyone, if you've got to commute, if you got to travel, spin the audiobook, you will not regret it. If you're into the subject matter, of course.
Okay, okay, I like that. Now, I've got some questions of my own.
Sure.
And a few of these that were given to me by some people. So let me get my little notepad right here. For the video people, I really do got my notepad here. All right. Hey, this is what a buddy of mine, we're just going to call him Ted from Toledo. Shout out
Okay.
Ted from Toledo. I'll just keep him anonymous. He wanted to know, do you feel that there's a difference between having sex on porn and having sex in real life? Is there a difference?
Certainly, 100%. Okay. Now, if you're having sex with a performer, likely they were putting on a performance for you. I mean, I'm not saying that happened all the time. I'm saying that like sometimes I'd be like, what the fuck is going on right now? Like, can you turn off the hooker switch, please? And let's just, like have like regular bedroom sex. But in porn, the positions aren't comfortable because you need to have light, you need to open up, you need to see the penetration happening because that's why we're here. So in that sense, yeah, it's very different. There's so many young bucks out there that think they can be a porn star because they rock it in the bedroom. All right, cool. Well, now imagine there's five other guys in that room that are watching because they have different purposes. You've got the bright lights. Temperature might not be comfortable. It might be very cold or it might be very hot. And you need to maintain an erection for a good 45 minutes at least, and be able to come on command. How is that normal in the bedroom?
Right. That sounds like an android. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
robot.
Yeah, well, that's a lot of what the male performers are. I mean, that's why I hired the same guys over and over and over again.
Okay. Now, my personal question, because I always wondered this about the porn stars, because you said, you've slept with a porn star. Is there a difference in the composition of the vagina from a porn star to a normal woman?
No, all shapes and sizes, my friend.
Because look, this is the only reason. Because everybody wants to put a perspective. Oh no, it's like throwing a hot dog down the hallway with a porn star, and
That
I'm like, nah,
happens. It
it does
happens
happen.
sometimes.
Oh, it
It
does.
does happen sometimes, sure.
Oh,
Um,
snap.
yeah, yeah. I mean, like I said, all shapes and sizes.
Okay. So thank you for answering that one.
Yeah.
Here's next question. So after writing this book, you get it published. You have a copy in your hand. Who's the first person that you sent a copy to?
The guys from the Howard Stern show, the ones that it all started with the Howard Stern show. I mean, I can call into that show now if he's ever talking about porn, and he'll pick up my calls and we'll have a discussion about it. That's where I am now. But it's all started when I hired Sal the stockbroker um, as a co-host for a live show. And then I started meeting other guys from the show, like JD and everyone else. And right away, I sent them copies because I thanked them in the actual author's forward and the acknowledgments because they got me a little more coverage by saying my name repeatedly on the Howard Stern show, which was a show that I literally listened to starting in seventh grade. So Howard was a big part of my life in that. So that was it. I'll tell you the most fun and slash awkward person was sitting next to my father when he was reading the book.
Oh Lord.
But see, that's the stuff I write about. I lean into the bizarre and awkward. I'm not there for, the hot and sexy and all of that. You want that, you could read erotica. This is not that. This is more like let's lean into the bizarre and awkward aspects of the industry. And I wanted the entire book to be that. Like what stands out in my mind? Oh yeah, that really weird thing happened. And so I would add to it. And there's side stories all throughout throughout the book.
All right, and this is one thing that I always wanted to know. Have you ever, like, I know you said vaginas come in different shapes and sizes, but have you ever seen a vagina? And I had this happen in real life to me one time, or in life, not real life. I said, "There's something wrong with the pussy." Like I looked at it and it wasn't like I ain't talking about composition like roast beef or nothing like that. I'm talking about I looked at it and I was like, I put my clothes
What
on and left.
was there a discharge?
I seen the discharge in the underwear, but I seen it and I was like, "There's something wrong with the pussy," and I left.
You're a very wise man to have left there, sir, because either that could have been a yeast infection or something worse like gonorrhea or chlamydia.
Right. Because then I would have been like the Jay-Z song "Red, Blue, Green." You learn, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
didn't want that in like. So you have seen that before, like in the porn industry, like you seen something that you just had to be like, "There's something wrong with the pussy," and just look away from it.
Well, there would be some times like a performer would have a yeast infection, and so you have to work around that. You're basically seeing cottage cheese like coming out at times, and
Oh,
it's really gross. Yeah, like people don't realize how disgusting the porn industry could be at times. Um, and so yeah, that's another reason why you hire professionals because they're like, It's just another day in the trenches here, and we are going to get through this war, sir. And every day was a war, it felt like. Some days, I'll tell you, there's the things that stick out to me were the days that went kind of sideways, because that's what you remember. But there are so many scenes that I just don't remember. And the reason why is because everything went smoothly. It was an easy day, no problems, no concerns, no issues. So, yeah, that's probably what had happened.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you for that one.
yeah.
Now, in closing, I'd like
Mhm.
to know this thing right here because this will help me out in life. And I can go forward from here because thank you. You gave me some knowledge that I feel good about because I have proverbs and stuff that I preach to my cohorts and everything. And I tell them, man, if something's wrong with the pussy, walk away from it. I tell them I'm honest. I'm like, if the pussy's going to interrupt, just leave. There's
Yeah.
more in the sea. Like, don't take that. Has in writing this book, reflecting on your 20-year career, um, you have a lot of jaw dropping anecdotes.
Mhm.
Can you give me 4 anecdotes that we can hear real fast to end this show? I want this. This is your when you do this. It's not getting into character, but I feel like it's getting into character because you were a person. You're 2 different people. You're who you are, and then this. It may not be a persona to you, but I feel like it's a persona. You,
Yeah.
it's you. Can you give us a few anecdotes real quick that will just
Well, I'll set it up for a teaser so people will buy the book.
okay?
I
Let's
think
do
I
that.
think
Oh,
that's
hold
a
on, hold on, hold on. Do a shameless plug real quick, please.
So if you go to viclagina.com, not only is there a trailer for the book that has porn stars and porn star boobies for you to see and peruse, you can order whichever you choose, Kindle, print, signed print copy, or the audiobook. And that will any of those buttons will direct you where you can buy it. Um, but I'd say the prologue and the epilogue, as well as the scene that didn't get released because it wasn't compliant, and I'd say the story of how I had 2 shoots going at once, and there was my male talent on both scenes got arrested, and I had 4 girls coming out of makeup and no one to have sex with them. And I solved that story. That was a good story. The prologue is a live show that I did about 50 feet in that direction by my pool. It was a live orgy to end a summer in 2011. And I was worried that the cops were going to come, and they were called. And that happened. And the cops did arrive when the shoot was going on. The epilogue, and this goes to all the young bucks who think they can be in porn, this was a live show as well, trying to find the next male Brazzers porn star. And you have a bunch of people signing up. We were supposed to get 50 guys. It wound up only getting 12 guys because a lot of them either faked their tests or didn't show up or didn't do anything. But if you really want to know the insanity of what it's like to possibly be a male porn star, the epilogue, that is for you. The scene that wasn't released, it was because they felt that it was dancing on the line of necrophilia because it
Oh,
took place in a morgue.
oh,
Now,
yeah.
no one was having sex with the corpse. That would have been technical necrophilia. But this was one they thought was a little too close. So they wound up shelving that scene and it never saw the light of day. But the audiobook contains clips of everything I'm talking about right there. So it's not just me narrating it, it's a little more interactive, I guess you could
Okay,
say.
some ad libs in there.
Ad libs. Well, you have to understand too, my alter ego is talking throughout the book as well. So the book is almost like a split personality kind of situation. When you're in this for that long, you start having your brain fracture a little bit and you kind of lose it a little bit. And I would say that aspect of it is a byproduct of being in the industry for as long as I was.
So on that note, Vic, I want to thank you for coming on the show.
For sure. I hope I didn't disappoint.
I know that was amazing. That was amazing. And everyone, when this one comes out, when it's on TikTok, YouTube, and everywhere else, I want everybody to listen to this one, view it, and listen. The great thing about a podcast is it interacts with all your senses, just like porn does. So the visual, you can watch it wherever. The audio, you can listen to any podcatcher. But the greatest thing is the show notes. In the show notes, you'll be able to find where you can meet and greet Vic across the internet, and maybe not snail mail because we don't do that because that's kind of creepy. But you'll be able to find him on the internet, interact with him, get involved with him. Definitely go to his website and get his book, and get the audio book for people that want the true interaction of the man beyond the book. So get both of them, take them home, embrace them, pass them along, and man, they will make a great Christmas present, birthday present, or anything that can spark a wild hair in your family and make you the talk of the town. So on that note, I'm JR, he's Vic, and now we're going to let that British lady take us out.
Please follow WV Uncommonplace on Instagram, Tumblr, Twitter, TikTok, where we have some great content, Facebook, LinkedIn. Hit up the merch store at uncommonplace.square.site. Join the email list from the website, and rate, subscribe, and give feedback from your favorite podcatcher. And lastly, thanks for listening, and tune into the next episode.